an effort to pass a comprehensive economy-wide climate change law called the Waxman-Markey Law. It barely squeaked by in the House, and it never got to a vote in the Senate. It couldn't muster the necessary 60 votes to get to the floor, and so it died. Particularly the Congress that was elected in 2010 the House has been passing a whole series of anti-environmental laws. For example, the EPA Regulatory Relief Act is what they called it. It's really the Disempower EPA Act, and it overwhelmingly passed in the House. Fortunately, it didn't get anywhere in the Senate. So where does that leave us? This is a chart that shows several different pathways for the quantity of future global greenhouse gas emissions. The number on the line on the top shows business as usual, continuation of the prior trends, and this just goes out to 2050. And if this is what happens, we'll probably be somewhere between 3 and 4 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial conditions, which, as a recent report from the World Bank shows, would lead to horrendous consequences. The red line below that shows what happens if the countries of the world carry out the voluntary commitments they made after the Copenhagen conference. These are not legally binding, but it's what various countries, including the US, including China, including others, voluntarily said they'll try to do. The dotted line below that is what happens if some additional optional measures are undertaken. This gives us a temperature rise by 2050 of somewhere between 2 and 3 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial conditions. The solid line below that is where we need to be to have a high likelihood of keeping to the 2-degree objective. And the dotted line below that is 1.5 degrees. The small island nations have been calling for a 1.5 degree objective because at 1.5 degrees, they probably survive. At 2 degrees, they probably drown. But we see that there is a very broad gap that needs to be filled. I don't have time to get into the various techniques that are available. There are a number of methods in changing the energy sector led by increased energy efficiency, but also renewables, carbon capture and sequestration, nuclear, and some other measures. But we have an enormous gap. So that brings me to the final thing I want to talk about, which is 2 possible areas where I think the International Bar Association could play a constructive role at the intersection of climate change and human rights, and where there is not nearly enough work going on. There is a lot of work in some other areas. Many groups have called for reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, but some particular things that I'd like to focus on. We are seeing around the world a large number of people displaced each year by weather-related events. It's very tricky to attribute these events to climate change. Weather-related events happen all the time, have happened for a long time, but there are more of them, and the sorts of things that we're seeing in terms of extreme precipitation, extreme drought, and so forth